Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Heidi Horsley, and I'm here today with my guest co-host, Alan Pedersen. Hi, Alan.
How are you doing, Heidi?
Good. I'm glad you're here today.
I'm honored to be here. I always love doing shows with you. So
we are going to do something that is near and dear to my heart.
Yes.
A Sibling Loss show.
Yep.
And we're going to talk about grieving together, how friends help us cope with loss.
Yeah. I think friendship, whatever grief you're going through, I think friendship is key and important. People that will walk with you, crawl with you, lay in the grief with you, celebrate the good times with you. Whatever your grief journey you're going through, it's invaluable. But I think today what's really cool is we're going to focus on siblings who some of them here today have tight friendships.
Absolutely.
And we're going to learn about them.
Yep.
And so it's going to be a good show.
It is. It's so important because I think, when my brother died, I was only 20.
Yeah.
He was 17. I knew no one that had ever lost a brother or sister.
Right.
No one my age.
Right.
So reaching out and finding this group of people was invaluable to my life and my, the way that I healed.
Yep.
So I'm going to introduce our incredible guest. I'll start with you, Alan Pedersen, since you're sitting next to me.
Yes.
So Alan, you are an award-winning songwriter and singer, a television writer, and a host. You have hosted 10 of our shows, which is phenomenal.
It's a lot.
Yes, it's been great.
I've never gotten a check. We'll talk about that after.
The check is in the mail, Alan.
That's what you said a couple of years ago. Okay.
So your daughter Ashley died in an automobile accident when she was only 18 years old.
Yep.
You have presented programs for grieving families in over 1,600 cities. That is unbelievable.
You're not going to ask me to name them, I hope.
That is unbelievable.
It's been a
and
great
I
journey.
have a picture of the Angel Van that is up right now as we speak,
cool.
or going up. You do Angels Across the USA tour. You were still doing it.
Right. Wrapping up this, actually the end of May.
Yep. So if people want to know more about that and want Alan to come and visit them where they are, just go to Angels Across the USA tour.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And you are the former executive director of the Compassionate Friends, and we served on the board together as well at the Compassionate Friends.
We have.
So welcome, Alan.
We have known each other nearly 20 years.
We have.
Hard to believe.
We have. Sitting right next to you is Jason Wendroff-Rawnicki.
Yeah.
I knew Jason's parents before I knew him.
Oh, that's true.
And they're awesome. Varda and Arnie, giving a shout out to them.
Yeah.
Jason is a certified yoga educator with a master's degree in psychology. Mm-hmm. He's an entrepreneur and business owner and co-founded Shine Yoga Center in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. He lost his sister Lauren in a car accident when she was only 24. And in November, he will be launching his podcast called Small Pieces, Big Picture.
Yep.
So anyone that wants to hear that goes to where? Small Pieces, Big Picture.
Yeah, it's on all the podcast platforms.
Love it,
Yep.
love it. I'm really excited that you are doing this. Next to you is Fallon Reynolds. Fallon lost her older brother Anthony to an accidental overdose when he was just 35 years old. Today she is involved in the Compassionate Friends, which is where we met, both on a local and national level. She volunteers at the registration desk during conferences and chaperones younger siblings in activities. She supports siblings all over the place. I see her. She's really an invaluable part of the organization. So welcome, Fallon.
Thank you. Good to be here, Fallon.
And then next to here is Keith Singer, next to Fallon. And I knew his parents way before I knew him as well. A shout out to Babe and Michelle, who are very involved in TCF and are Varda and Arnie's very dear friends. I love this. Keith lost his sister Lori at just 18 in an automobile accident. At the time, she was serving in the United States Navy. And as a mom of a veteran, I always get chills, and thank you, and thank Lori for her service. So you facilitate a Compassionate Friends monthly chapter, and it is in Staten Island.
Right.
And you moderate panels and facilitate workshops at the Compassionate Friends national conferences. And I always give a shout out to your panel because it is standing room only, it's phenomenal, very popular, and it's a sibling panel for parents and grandparents.
Yep.
So welcome, Keith.
Thank you.
And then next to Keith is Elizabeth Devita-Raeburn, who I have known since the 90s. Very, very long time. And she's also one of my neighbors and love her. She's an author, journalist, and blogger. Her brother Ted died of a rare autoimmune disease at age 17. There was a show that was loosely based on his life called The Boy in the Bubble.
Right.
Her stories have appeared in the Washington Post, Self, Glamour, Psychology Today, and many, many publications. She is a phenomenal writer who has written what I find to be one of the most groundbreaking books out there in sibling loss today, called The Empty Room, Understanding Sibling Loss. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thanks for having me here.
And then next to her is our resident New York City comedian.
Hello.
Jordon Ferber. Hi, Jordon. I've known Jordon forever also. He is a comedian, podcaster, and public speaker. His brother Russell died in a car accident at just 21. Jordon is very involved with the Compassionate Friends, both locally and nationally. He runs the New York City sibling meetings, and you're doing it virtually, you said.
Yep.
He has a very popular podcast called Where's the Grief? He and his family run the Russell Ferber Foundation, which provides scholarships for the Culinary Institute of America. They do it down in the Village at the middle school that Russell and you attended.
Yep.
The Village School.
At the Village Community School.
Village Community School, and it is on June 28th this year.
Correct.
Doors open at 6:30.
Yep.
Phenomenal comedians.
You get tickets at russellferberfoundation.org.
russellferberfoundation.org. They have amazing food there. They have amazing comedians there.
Yeah.
So I will be there in the front row. You know that. And the last thing I want to say is I love the name of your workshop that you do at Compassionate Friends. It's called How's Your Mother?
Yep.
So welcome, Jordon.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's our dynamic team here.
We got a powerhouse
We
today.
do. We do have a powerhouse by design.
All right, so let's pick their brain, Heidi.
Yes.
Let's do. You go
So
ahead.
our first question we have for the panel.
Let's start with Jordon.
Okay, we'll start with Jordon. It's what role has friendship played in your grief?
Oh, it's been invaluable. You know, there's no substitute for having people in your life that you can talk to about this stuff. It's hard to find people and places to talk about some of this stuff. I think friendship is really a you know, as Alan was saying at the very top, I mean, it's really a key to life in general. But going through a really intense experience of loss really helps having people who understand, or at least are willing to sit with you while you're crying about it. There's really no substitute for having people that you can share the burden with.
Now, did you have friends early in your loss? Did you develop them over time? I mean, tell us a little bit
I
about
mean, it's very strange. You know, the friends that I had before Russell died I had a very hard time relating to them because they were still trying to relate to a version of me that no longer really existed. And I really had to almost train some of them on how to deal with me and how to deal with my new normal because it was an adjustment for them. And the people that I met after the fact, especially the people that I met through the Compassionate Friends, other bereaved siblings, the bonds that I created with those people were almost immediate. It was kind of weird how quickly I really became very close friends with other bereaved siblings who really understood what I was going through with very little explanation needed.
Right.
Whereas people that I had in my life prior to Russell's death needed a lot of explanation, needed a little bit of hand-holding if they wanted to stay in my inner circle, because people, you know, your contact list changes drastically when you go through a loss like this, and some people don't even really give you an explanation. They just drift away. They give you reason to cut them out of your life because they just don't understand, or they aren't willing to try to get it in any way.
Right. Let's move on down the
Elizabeth?
line.
Well, I was 14 when my brother died, and there was no one in my circle who had a similar experience, similar loss. Sibling loss wasn't a thing, wasn't recognized around me as something having happened to me. So I really didn't have friends with it for a very long time. It wasn't until my mid-20s when I started working on research for my book, just to reach out and say, like, I wonder if anyone had anything, you know, similar in their experience to mine, just raising the question because I couldn't find anything on it, that I started to talk to other people who'd lost siblings. And that was a complete eye-opener. And like Jordon said, you just like sort of have this sort of immediate rapport and connection. And so that was when it started to dawn on me that this was like a shared experience. And I would say now, like, full disclosure, I hang out with Jordon and Heidi regularly. Like, it's hugely important in my life to have people who get it almost without having to say anything. Like, I know if there's an anniversary that Jordon mentions online of Russell's birthday or death, that, like, I'm going to text him that day. And I know that they'll do the same for me. Like, it's just this really powerful bond that I'm so grateful for.
Yeah, we all need someone in our life, don't you think, to remind us we're not crazy. We're not hanging on and refusing to let go. We're living the rest of our lives with the loss, which is the definition of bereaved. Keith?
Yeah, I would say I separated my existing friends. I didn't really have someone to kind of share the loss with immediately. It wasn't until actually I went to a conference and Jordon was one of the folks that I first learned and realized that I had this unspoken I don't know, it was a bond immediately. I was able to open up, be myself. Didn't have to think. I knew that everybody else there got it. I didn't have to explain anything. So the way I look at it is kind of I had my friends that I always had, but I don't really share grief, and I don't really share that conversation with them. And then I have my sibs that kind of I know there's this really weird comfort bond that is hard to explain to somebody that doesn't really get it until they do, and then you're like, oh yeah, I really understand now. I think it's the comfort of I don't have to explain to you. I know you get it, and I don't.
So kind of compartmentalized, so to speak.
Yeah.
That because I think some people in grief, they don't always know. Should I just tell everybody everything? Would your recommendation be maybe not so much?
I think it depends on the relationship you have. I didn't feel like, maybe it's bad to say, being a guy, I didn't think I had my guy friends that I can lean on and that would understand. I think some people tried to understand, but I didn't really put them in that position. I just kind of shielded them off and said, hey, that I'm not going to have that emotional connection with them. It wasn't until I met other sibs, and that's where we had that connection, and friendships grew real quick.
And I love that we all call each other our sibs.
Right.
You know,
Right.
it's like we're brothers and sisters.
Right.
And some of you on this panel, Fallon and I have siblings that are still here,
Right.
but the rest of you are single sibs right now. I mean, you aren't only children, but you are only children. I know that kind of sounds like a weird
Right.
thing to say.
No, it is. You're right. You're right.
I'm not an only child, but everything still gets blamed on me.
Thank you, Jordon. I love that.
But Heidi, that's exactly what we're talking about. Like, we get what you're saying when you're saying you're not an only child, but you are an only
Yeah.
child. We get that, right?
Yeah.
Like, other people will be like, well, what is she really talking about? So,
Yeah.
it's a
What
great-
is the importance? I mean, to somebody say they should they seek out friendship if they don't have it? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I was very fortunate when I lost my brother with my friend circle. You know, my friends are more like family. I have a very unique crew of people, and they were there for me from the second my brother died. Like, we got the phone call, and we went to where he was, and 20 minutes later, 10 of my best friends were there and with me.
That's
and who
amazing.
wasn't there was at my house, waiting for me to get there. So my situation with my friends, I didn't have to hold back on anything. I was able to unleash everything that I was feeling, and they were very, very supportive. And I feel very fortunate that I have that, because there are times when you have friends who aren't the most supportive, you know, and we had a little bit of that when my brother died too. You know, we had people who my brother's death was becoming about them. That's a very hard thing to deal with when you're grieving and someone tries to take your sibling's grief and make their grief more important than
Oh,
yours.
yeah. I remember that well.
And that, you know, so there's two sides to the coin
Yeah.
of friendships. You know, it's great to have those friends and to have that connection, but they're not always the greatest. And it's working through filtering out the ones that are going to be there for you and the ones that aren't.
Yeah.
Like Jordon was saying, kind of separating it. Keith saying separating who he could go to and who he can't.
Right. Well, I think another big misconception is that people think, you know, we're talking about friends, and my friends know my loss, and they think that when we're together, like, it's just so weird that we're just grieving. I've seen you all in action. There's a whole lot going on there that's not grieving, right?
Oh, yeah.
But isn't it the comfort that you get in
Yeah.
a friendship that just says, you know what, if a song comes on and it takes me back, I can look at you and go, oh my God, Ashley loved that song. And you're not going to think I'm weird. Or if I tell you that I took a birthday cake out to the cemetery and, sat and had a piece of cake and a beer in front of a headstone, you're not going to think that I've lost my mind. Isn't the comfort the big thing?
That is the comfort with my siblings, absolutely.
Yeah.
The friendships that we've made together in our grief journey with our similarities they're my lifeline.
Yeah.
Right.
Without them,
We
I
don't have to
wouldn't
talk
be
about our
where I
loss
am.
Well,
all the
that's the
time.
thing, Fallon. We've made friends that we didn't know. Like I didn't know any of you before my brother died, and now I consider you all close friends. So it's where we meet people, and all of a sudden we have all these new friends too.
And if you even look at the composition of our panel, like Jordon, Keith, myself, and Alan all lost people to a car accident, right? Like, and so we all we all find those relationships that we wouldn't have had otherwise, those commonalities. You know, because I know that for me, the thing that kind of triggers me when I want to talk about my sister, when I want to talk about Lauren, I get the eye roll, the pity eye roll, and that I'm like, I want to talk about her because she lived.
Well, that's key for all of you. Have you noticed that sometimes people want to know how our brother or sister died, and once they hear the story, they're done?
Yeah.
It's like, no, now, guess what? That was a moment in time.
Yeah.
There's a whole life I want to talk about.
It's also not really a story I tell. You know, that's not a story about Russell's life.
Exactly,
Right.
Jordan.
It's the important part, right?
Yeah.
The first example that comes to mind is that this year, Lauren was 24 when she died. She's been gone 24 years. So, like, it represents that she's dead longer than she's alive. And for probably about 2 or 3 months before, like, her transition day or angelversary or however you want to call it, I was really like working myself mentally up into a frenzy, like, oh my God, like this is a big deal. But we have, I run a Thursday night meeting every week, and we get together with the siblings and we talk about stuff like just like this. And I was able to really talk it through and realizing that it's just my mind just sort of going crazy. And I had a whole group of people that could listen and really understand the cycling that was happening. And so they were able to, and I see it, sometimes you get into a hole, and they were there outside the hole able to pull me up rather than getting down into the hole and sitting there with me, you know. So they were able to lend a hand and lift me out of it. So with my friends, it's like I like to see that sometimes I have to crawl into that hole when I'm not feeling great, and then I like to have my friends outside the hole reaching their hand down and pulling me up rather than coming and sitting in the hole with me.
I love that. Fallon, what are your thoughts on this?
So, a significant moment for me, kind of incorporating TCF, was my first conference. I remember getting there, I flew out there by myself. I got to the hotel and I'm standing outside the hotel, and there's a group of girls standing there. And this girl just looks at me and she goes, TCF? And I was like, yeah. She's like, all right, let's go.
Wow.
And that was Andrea Keller.
Oh,
And that's it. She's been my person since.
that's amazing.
She texted my mother at 8:30 this morning to wish her a happy birthday.
Wow.
She texts me for every birthday, anniversary, moment in life, and it was like an instant connection. And it was, you know, I'm not a shy person, as everyone on this panel knows. I go right into it and I talk to everybody, but, you know, having gone to meetings with, you know, Keith in our Staten Island chapter and doing the Staten Island chapter things, I was familiar with TCF, but walking into that moment, it was a little scary. You know, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know, you know, I've heard the stories and the this and the that, and to just walk in and have someone who 5 minutes before I had no idea who they were, to now they're my lifelong person.
That's
and then
amazing.
just envelop me like that was amazing.
Yeah.
I love that
it.
story.
Keith?
Mine's clear. It was my first conference. Was, I guess at that point, was dealing with a lot of anger issues. Still really not. I didn't have anyone really to open up and express myself to, and it was meeting. And like I said, I always give him the elbow, but Jordon was definitely one of the first people that I felt okay with, felt comfortable with. It was like an immediate bond where we all just kind of were hanging out. And I think to your point, it didn't feel like we were doing anything, but we were. Right? I think we say You know, some of the best conversations are had over maybe an alcoholic beverage, but ultimately, I think that, you know, you just.
Well, it's funny. I didn't
built
even
that-
know you guys drank at those conferences.
We get our best work done at the bar.
First I heard it, I was in charge there for a couple of years. I was unaware.
Yeah, the workshops are great. I love them, but absolutely, it's the in-between workshops
Yes.
that. So I definitely know, clear as in my head, the big one was making those friends at the conference that lifelong and continue to grow and add to that list. Each conference, you add on to that group and new people and bring them in, and that's that's also a great thing is it's you just add to the party and you meet different dynamics. I think you talked about earlier where you find different things that may be specific to your situation and that you kind of have and you have, I don't know, I found that through the years continue to add to that list of friends and
Cool.
bonds.
Elizabeth.
Heidi, I have 2 stories, and they both relate to you.
Oh, ouch.
I'm going to tell them or not. One's when I first met you, and then one is more recent, so you tell me.
Go for it.
Go for it.
I'll tell one. You tell me which one you went.
First met her.
First met. All right, so I started researching this book on Sibling Loss, The Empty Room, that Heidi mentioned earlier, in the 90s. I don't even remember anymore. It's been that long. And through connections, I got Heidi's name and number and talked to her. And at the time, she was pregnant with her oldest child.
Who's now 24, almost 25.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been a long time. And I think you were like the second person I interviewed for this project. And Heidi was telling me the story of her brother's death in the car accident and how she had been sent to identify the body. And in the context of this story, which I won't get into the details here, but we ended up laughing together. And you were talking about this sort of comfort level that you can talk about something horrific and yet understand one another and find the humor and humanity and this sort of bridge to normal life from the trauma.
Right.
And that was when I first started to recognize, you know, how valuable it was to have this shared experience and that, you know, this needed to be understood, to be out there for other people, and that I needed it in my life myself. So,
And Jordon, just before you go into your answer, you know, we keep talking about conference. So for those out there watching who have no idea that maybe have had a sibling loss, what is the conference that you're talking about?
Oh, the TCF conference, we take over a whole hotel. It's parents, grandparents, and siblings, but we take over the entire hotel. It's a full immersive experience, and it's really where I feel like I learned how to be again, how I learned how to be myself again. It's like we're all saying, it's all the in-between times, in between the workshops, where we're just sort of hanging out with each other, where we seamlessly go from talking about really heavy topics about our grief and our loss to joking around about stuff, and it goes back and forth pretty seamlessly in a way that's it was revelatory to be able to laugh about anything again.
But would it be fair to say it's almost like it's a weekend where you get to go feel like you're Russell's brother with a bunch of people who understand how crazy that may sound to the rest of the world?
I get
It's
to
perfectly
feel the
normal
most
to you.
myself in those scenarios because I get to talk about Russell in ways where people understand that I'm talking about his life. You know, you talk to people that haven't been through that experience, and I feel like a lot of people only hear you talking about their death.
Right.
But when we're surrounded by that energy of other sibs, we know. We get it. You know, we're talking about their lives. And I always remember, I do have one friend, one of my best friends that came out when Russell died for the Shiva, and I remember him asking me, it was just the two of us, we were sitting around, and he asked me, how long before I can make fun of you for this?
Wow.
And I started laughing immediately because I understood exactly what he meant, which is how long before we can start talking about this the way that we talk about everything else.
Right.
Wow, what a gift.
And it took a long time before I really remembered that moment as a key part of my process of getting back to being me again. But being at those conferences, I think, was really where I found a lot of those tools and the building blocks to put myself back together again. Remind myself who I am.
This is why when I introduced all of you, I said the way that your brother or sister died, I did it. I didn't ask you to do it because I don't want to spend time talking about that. I want to get it out there, and I want to move on and talk about the important things, which is friendships, healing, hope, why our grief is marginalized and minimized. Those are the things, and our brothers and sisters So I'm like, okay, everyone's going to wonder how they died and how old they were. Let's get that out of the way. Now let's move on.
And I think for those out who might be watching tonight who say, well, you know, how can I be of comfort to somebody who's grieving? A friend of mine said that the biggest help he had going through his grief is he had this friend. He would go over to his house and he would knock on the door and his friend would say, okay, are we going to sit? Are we going to work? Or do you want to talk? And he just sat there and they did whatever that was.
You know, it makes me think of a question that I'd love to ask y'all real quick. Oh, we have 1 minute. Quickly, what do you miss the most about your brother or sister?
Her
Jason.
laugh, for sure.
Okay.
I'm going to say the same exact thing. His laugh.
Free spirit.
Yeah.
Oh boy, it's too much. I don't know. His ability to get away with all the things that I could never.
So many great resources that you offer. Just briefly, how do they get a hold of you and what's the resource?
The best way is going to www.siblingisland.com. I have a weekly newsletter that comes out with the online Zoom meetings for every week, so they can put their email in there and get access to those meetings.
And you're going to be getting married.
Yes.
And we'll be putting the address up on the screen. You are going to have a crowd. The dance is going to be unbelievable. Keith?
Private group on Facebook. It's called Sounds of the Siblings.
Okay.
And we also do have the Staten Island chapter, TCF.
And you meet in person or online?
We were meeting in person right
Okay.
after COVID.
The
Yeah.
Compassionate Friends online,
Yep.
they can find you.
Yep.
Best resource I have to offer is my book, The Empty Room. It's on Amazon. People can find my page on Facebook. I have a lot of sibling friends that I've met and not met there as well. And I'll be at Compassionate Friends this summer.
Perfect. And Where's the Grief?
Yes, Where's the Grief is my podcast. You can get it wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also go to where'sthegrief.com if you're not a podcast person and you just want to listen to it through the internet. And I've got interviews with just about everybody on the. Everybody. Fallon's not on that. Hasn't been on yet. But I've had everyone else on this panel on the show.
And your group meets virtually?
And my TCF group meets virtually on Zoom every Tuesday evening, and the links are all on the siblingisland.com email that goes out every week.
That's terrific.
Love it.
Well, some rock stars today, huh?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Thank you so much to this dynamic team of siblings. They're all very important to me. And if you want to see more shows about sibling loss, please go to opentohope.com. And we always say, if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you've found your own. And God bless.
God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've learned that it helped me to help others, to know I'm not the only one, put one foot in front of the other, find a life.
Adding hope to the darkness, you start on the trip to recovery.
Reach deep down inside and say, I am going to live on.
We laugh, we cry, and remember.
Hope without action doesn't work. Hope with action can change the world.
We always say, if you've lost hope, please lean on ours.